Hey, it's AJ again from Keyrenter Provo, your local property management guy. I wanted to talk today about some really cool things. As you know, in Utah here, we just came out of the legislative session, and there was a lot of cool things that happened with the property management elements within that session. So I wanted to go through it. I'm going to be reading some of the stuff here because I don't want to get it wrong. But some really cool information that may or may not be useful to you, but here in the property management industry, it's really helpful for us. So let's go through it. As everyone knows, you know, the session wrapped up on May the 6th at midnight. They always kind of go late. It was really busy. There was a lot of complicated issues that were brought up, but some really good things too. So there's a few things that the RHA, or the Housing Authority, it's the Rental Housing Association is really what it's called. RHA is what they stand for. These are some of the things that they worked on for this session. So they worked on HB, or House Bill 377, sub-real estate amendments, and that was brought to the table by Representative Neil Walter. And what he wanted to do is talk more about and work through some of the licensing statutes, to complete the final step. And they went through all clear into the night. They were working closely with the Division of Real Estate here in Utah and other key stakeholders to work on this new residential property management license that they're trying to get passed through. And then that will be coupled with a new training program in January of 2027. And the final bill was a compromise to beginning this new licensure. So the bill is set forth to be effective on January 1st, 2027. It returns the dual broker language back into the statute after it had been removed last year. The bill codifies the position of principal property manager as a primary point of contact for a property management entity. And that's cool because, no longer, it essentially gives the property manager a more element of control within that property and within his business or her business especially. It established the broker supervision is still required for this new license, so that doesn't change. Unless the entity manages over 750 units or more, then it doesn't apply. The bill also put into law that PM licenses are not under broker supervision and are not required to use a trust as long as there is an agreement between the owner and the property manager and the provision is included in the lease agreement. So it has to be stated there. Finally, the bill instructed the legislature to study the best way for property management enforcement to be handled between the Division of Real Estate and the Division of Consumer Protection. Representative Walter, who was the sponsor once again, is a real estate practitioner and property manager himself and is a great advocate for the real estate industry. And the RHA is working with the DRE staff for ideas to best approach the administrative rule and continue education for this new license. So they're kind of figuring all that part of it out still. So we hope to have this new rules and education for this new license largely completed by the end of this summer. So it's kind of exciting. It'll be good to make sure that property managers are fully licensed, and it'll likely evolve over the first few years as we see how this works, but new licensing for property managers. So there you go. There's that piece. Then we'll move into SB 97. This is the tax revenue amendments by Senator Dan McKay is the sponsor on this one. And the RHA received a grant from the National Apartment Association to run an issue advocacy campaign to oppose SB 97, the bill that would have removed the primary residential property tax exemption from rental properties. The campaign engaged RHA members and other rental housing providers, real estate practitioners, and tenants to send their messages to legislators expressing their concerns about this ill-considered proposal. During the campaign, over 1,500 messages were sent to legislators expressing opposition to the proposal. SB evolved with each substitute bill. The third substitute put that residential property tax exemption to 40% from the current 45%. The RHA continued to oppose the bill throughout the process because we believe that the tax, and this is a lot of this is coming from the RHA themselves, they believe that the tax treatment of the owner-occupied and rental property should be equal. The RHA worked in conjunction with the UAR and others to lobby the Senate leading up to the final consideration for the bill on the Senate floor during the last week of the session. So a lot of these things came to the very wire. Once the bill was uncircled on the third reading calendar on Wednesday, March 5th, Senator Cal Musselman proposed an amendment to change the 40% exemption for rental properties to 45%. Senator Musselman did a great job advocating for rental property owners, which is helpful for our landlords, and renters, and discussed how this tax policy change would not be in effective policy change to incentivize home ownership. It actually de-incentivizes it. His amendment ended up passing comfortably with over 20 votes, and the bill was amended. The amended bill still failed, though, on a 14-15 vote. So that happened, and we just wanted everyone to know about that. And then the HB 29 bill, House Bill 29, it's titled Unfair and Deceptive Pricing Amendments, and it was brought to the table by Representative Tyler Clancy. Tyler said this bill would have given the Division of Consumer Protection broad authority to investigate and fine Utah businesses engaged in a variety of transactions. The RHA, again the Rental Housing Authority, opposed this bill because it was clear that rental housing leases were among the transactions the Division of Consumer Protection was interested in investigating using this expanded authority. So RHA believes that the Division of the Real Estate is the best division in the Department of Commerce to regulate real estate because the Division of Real Estate Commission and the DRE, their staff, they actually have real estate expertise, whereas the others do not. House Bill 29 ended up dying in the Senate after passing in the House, so it did not come into law. Then we had SB 309, Senate Bill 309, single-family home rental modifications. This was brought to the table by Senator John Johnson. This bill sought to add an excise tax ranging from $2,000 to $6,000 per unit on any owner who owns 25 or more single-family home rentals. Again, trying to tax those that have multiple properties. During its loan committee hearing, the RHA testified in opposition to the bill, along with other groups like the National Rental Council and the Utah State Tax Commission. The bill was held in committee, did not advance for further consideration. However, this is something we want to keep watching in the future because it may surface once again. Then there's the Senate Bill 76, which is called the Residential Rental Reporting Payments Amendments. This was brought to the table, or the group, by Senator Jen Plum. It was opposed by the RHA again because they believe that there are better ways to help tenants build credit than the mandatory rent reporting that the bill attempted to put into a statute. It was opposed because it mandated additional administrative burden on rental housing providers without the ability to charge a fee for that service. The Senate Business and Labor Committee voted to hold the bill in committee, and it did not proceed any further in the process. And then there's really just two more bills. The second to the last one is the Senate Bill 187. It's called the Renter Credit Reporting Amendments by, this was brought to the table by Senator Stephanie Pitcher. This bill would have established mandatory credit reporting by of rent by any landlord who accepts public assistance vouchers, as well as limiting the amount of landlord could charge for that service to pass through the credit agency fee. It was opposed. The original bill was opposed, for the same reasons that SB 76 were opposed as well. In response to the concerns, the bill's sponsor, Senator Pitcher, moved a substitute bill that would have limited this bill to a pilot test for just the Salt Lake Housing Authority, who was willing to cover the cost of this credit reporting. And they worked on another sponsor and further amendment and that sort of thing, but the bill ended up failing and it did not advance. And then the final bill, House Bill 478, it's called the Residential Rental Modifications Bill by Representative John Arthur. This bill was a continued attempt to codify a mandatory 60-day notice of rent increase. So what that means is if you're going to raise the rent, you have to give 60 days to the notice to do so. There was resistance to this proposed addition to the statute because typically these matters should be handled in contractual format. Representative John Arthur is a new representative who is replaced by Galen Benyon in the Cottonwood Heights area. He presented the bill, and a member, Jeremiah Mon, spoke in opposition. The committee ended up voting to hold the bill in committee, which means that it's died now 4 years in a row. So lots of great things happening with the different elements of our law with property management. I love that the RHA specifically, the Rental Housing Authority, is watching our backs as the lobbyist entity to help property managers and landlords make sure that we keep Utah a great place to invest in and to have properties in, because we want to make sure that renting properties is as easy process as possible and as profitable for landlords as possible. Utah is notoriously known to be very conservative in the way we handle landlords and tenants and how we manage those transactions. So super excited for the outcomes of what happened with the the sessions for the lawmakers and legislators this session in 2026. We'll keep watching these issues. I myself am part of that committee, so we hear and we talk about and discuss some of those issues together so that we know what's happening and we can prevent some of the ill-conceived, not necessarily, there's no malintention, but sometimes bills are passed or proposed that just have unintended consequences that are bad for everyone. We're trying to help prevent some of those things from happening. So this is AJ, your favorite property manager, local to the Utah County and St. George area, signing out, talking about the legislative session for 2026. See ya.